We're now recording and everyone from the lobby is in the meeting.
Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel today. My name is Ross Bonthorn and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Let me start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and paying respects to the elders past, present and emerging. May I also welcome my fellow panel members, Kate Bartlett, Glenys James and Phil Young, and I'd ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves. So Kate, if you would start.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Kate Bartlett. I'm one of the expert independent panel members on this panel. I'm a town planner by profession with about 17, 18 years experience. I've worked both in local government, previously at the City of Sydney, and in the private sector, and I currently run my own town planning consultancy called The Planning Studio.
Thank you, Kate. Glenys, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hello, Chair and panel and members of the public. I'm a qualified town planner. I'm now retired and do some panel work on a part-time basis. I worked at Blacktown City Council for over 45 years. 35 of those of which were as a Director of Planning and Development and other things. I was also the Assistant General Manager of that period. I was also honoured to receive the Public Service Medal from the Australian Government in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenys. And also, Phil, if you could just briefly give us an introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Okay, I'm Phil Young. I'm the community representative. I've been representing the community for over 2 decades here in Clontarf, running what was formerly the precinct system with Manly Council, and now we've morphed into our own Clontarf Community Forum. We produce newsletters, and once a quarter we have Zoom meetings with council and we deal with all the relevant issues. Prior to that, I was a senior executive working in the business area.
Thanks, Phil. And my name, I'll mention again, is Ross Bonthorn. I'm an architect planner. I, for a number of years, was the principal architect and a director of the Lend-Lease Group. And I also served on the City Council for a great number of years, and then was appointed to establish Pittwater when the secession happened. Now we've re-amalgamated, but I was appointed by the state government and subsequently elected to Pittwater Council. Subsequently, I have been involved in a number of other planning panels and been an advisor to people in this country and overseas on projects that are large-scale urban mixed-use developments, particularly in India, China, Malaysia and the East. So thank you. Let me give a very brief overrun of the role of the panel. I think most people are aware of the role and the way in which the panel has been established by the state government some years ago. And the role is to provide an independent and open forum for interested persons and groups to hear and make submissions about development proposals, to consider and determine development applications and application modifications, and provide recommendations to Council on planning proposals and any other development matters that may be referred to the panel. It should be noted specifically, the panel does not set policy, but works with the legal framework and policy set by Council, state government and the courts. As you've seen, the panel has 4 members. The chairperson is appointed by the Minister. Expert panel members are selected by Council from a process of acceptance from the state government. The community member is also appointed by the Council. The panel is bound by a code of conduct panel members must sign a declaration declaring whether they have a conflict of interest in relation to any matter on the agenda. The meetings are generally held on Wednesdays. The material is forwarded to all of the members. On-site inspections are carried out individually. The panel meets at a public meeting and then a closed session of the panel to deliberate on the issues and an announcement for the determinations that have been agreed to. The public meetings are video and audio recorded. The recordings are live streamed and published on Council's website. Each presenter is requested to be concise and will be able to talk for 3 minutes. Sorry, I've just got something on my screen. I'm sorry, my screen has. Sorry. So for 3 minutes, and then they will be advised they have a further minute to sum up. When presenting, it would be seen that it is a moment to present new facts, not reiterate or get into discussions or arguments. So I'll move into the formal meeting itself and commence by looking at the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies and declarations. I have no apologies, and I have seen copies of the declarations of interest, and there is no declaration that any of the members have made. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the Northern Beaches Local Planning meeting held on the 21st of August this year. They have been confirmed and were adopted by the chairperson and have been posted on the council website. So I'll move then to item 3. Item 3, I believe there is nothing that we have to consider. And so then I'll move into item 4, and 4.1 is the first of the agenda items. We have quite a number of agenda items. There are 4 listed for this meeting, the public meeting, and subsequently there are additional 5 items listed for the private meeting. It should be noted that the item number 4 in this meeting, the public meeting, has been deleted. I believe we've received notifications that the applicant wishes to delete that particular meeting, that particular application. And so I will move into the 5.1. Sorry. Item 4.1, and 4.1 is the application for the use of the restaurant in the golf club, and it's recommended for approval. I believe we have Mr. Graham McMullen wishes to address the panel. I'm not sure if Mr. McMullen is connected with us at this stage.
Yes, he is online.
So, Mr. McMullen, welcome to the panel meeting. And if you would like to address the panel, as I've indicated, you would be, please limit yourself if you can to 3 minutes, and you'll be notified of 3 and have a minute to sum up if you need to. But thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Graham McMullen. I'm a Director and Vice President of the Warringah Golf Club. I have steered the previous development application, which was approved in February for the building, and have steered this DA for the inclusion of a restaurant. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the original DA, which was 2022-2081, which was approved by the planning panel and the council for the building. However, there was a restriction in that it was only associated with ancillary use, which meant that we couldn't use the second floor. We could build the building, but we couldn't use the second floor because that was basically associated with restaurant, cafe facilities. So in in the meantime, the council has also had the LEP amended so that a registered club can be developed on the site. But we went ahead with this DA to get approval to put a restaurant in there because that was largely the design purpose of the whole development in the first place. And certainly with the consent of council, we look to develop a community club, and both for the community and the golf club to be accessed on that site, and also a part of the Warringah recreational centre upgrade. I really don't have much more to add. We are pleased that the council and the independent plan has seen fit to recommend this for approval. So I will, without further ado, just leave it there, Mr. Chairman, and be online to answer any questions.
Graham, thank you. Do any of the panel members have any questions or comments?
No.
No? Well, Graham, thank you for your time, and looking forward to the actual project happening. It's a great location and a great project, and so it's recommended for approval, and there will be a decision by this panel later today, and it will be on the council website within 24, maybe 48 hours.
I might just add, Mr. Chairman, that there were 81 submissions, and there was only one that was an objection, and it was about traffic, and it was to do with the and that was dealt with in the previous DA. So
yeah, I was about to make that comment myself. Actually, I thought it's amazing that there was one comment and it was nothing to do with the application. So
yep.
Anyway, good luck, and we'll look forward to when the building is completed and the restaurant opens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that item is dealt with. Item 4.2, 187 Allambie Road, Allambie Heights. It's an application. Sorry. Hello.
What's this? Okay.
If the person who's registered or logged on as Nick Sharp could please mute themselves.
Oh, okay. Nikki.
Hello. I'll continue, and what I understand that we have two speakers that wish to object, Nicole Davey and Anne Sharp, and the applicant, Nick Healy, wishes also to address the panel.
That's it.
So the recommendation is for deferred commencement of the application, and I'll call on, is Nicole Davey present, or does...
I am here, Chair, yes.
Yeah, okay, Nicole, would you like to please address the panel?
Yes.
Be mindful that we will allocate 3 minutes for you to present and then sum up for an additional minute if that's something you need time for.
Yes, I'm happy to. And unfortunately, I was not. Oh, have you got me audio? Unfortunately, I wasn't made aware of that time limit, so I'm running a bit on the fly, Chair, and I will do my very, very best. But if you could bear with me.
Nicole. We got your submission and we have read it.
Beautiful, fantastic.
So
that's the main thing. Perfect. Well, it is, but I'll run through it because I really want to communicate to the panel. I guess I might just wait for that person to unmute if that's okay. Can we mute that person? Thank you. Beautiful. Awesome. And yes, thank you for your time. As I said, my name's Nicole. I'm here representing the Madison Way Residents Action Group. And we'd like to express in the strongest terms that the Madison Way, people of Madison Way, many of whom are on the call today, absolutely oppose this development. I think the report from Council has led you to believe that our concerns have been addressed and that we have been appropriately engaged through this process, and that is absolutely not true. Nothing could be further from the truth. The main issue you will hear from us today, we believe that this development is against the very specific provisions assigned under the DCP, that the car park is not needed and represents a gross over provisioning of car parking needed for the site and a complete lack of consideration consideration for viable and less impactful alternatives. The lighting is not appropriate, and the design of the car park will lead to an already awful stormwater management of this site to be exacerbated and impact our homes and our families. So given that I will take my speech as read, I would just like to call out a couple of main things. By council's own admission, this car park represents an over-provisioning of the site for some 51 spaces. And these calculations are incorrect, given that the report that council relied on has assigned a memorial pool as an office building, which it most clearly is not. There are already 215 car spaces on this site. There is ample free parking on Aquatic Drive, as well as a council car park at the Warringah Aquatic Centre, which is a 5-minute walk away. And this is to say nothing of the improved public transport services that are now available in the area. This car park is also being asked for despite the DA has been approved, as the car park is providing ancillary services to the purpose of the site, which is disability services. Unfortunately, there are no additional disability services being provided on this site. In fact, there are the 3 homes that are to be knocked down that were providing disability services to this type are being knocked down to make way for this car park. This is not a primary site for disability service provision. This is a head office where a CEO and the board and rooms and event spaces are given. This is not about providing better services to people with a disability. This is making sure that people in office jobs don't have to walk or catch the bus to work. But the main issue for us is the stormwater issue, and the one I will spend the most time on. The impact of this car park will place a massive issue. It will make a massive issue even worse. The impact of this is not a small amount of runoff trickling into our backyards. It is torrents of water that flow into our homes and keep us up at night. And I sent a PowerPoint presentation with videos and images through to this panel, which I desperately hope you have seen, so you can actually understand the actual lengths in which I am talking to. It cannot be overstated. The council report and the DA failed to identify that the surface water from this site will flow to the southwest, which follows the natural topography of the site. While the roof water from the current houses might flow via gutters and drains to a northeast drain, which is what is being proposed in the development, that is in fact uphill from where the surface water will flow. And the reason that there is no southwest drain on the site is because there is no southwest drainage on the site. The site drainage is into the back of our houses. There are not many universal truths in life, but 2 of them are that water will always find a way and will always flow downhill, a fact that the applicant and council do not seem to acknowledge. And a 69-space car park made of bitumen and the associated concrete walkways will make this situation worse. It is already
Nicole, if you
dire.
could sum up, please.
Thank
if you.
you.
Wouldn't mind another minute.
We are not a bunch of angry residents cranky about a couple of extra cars. The truth is, panel, we are terrified. We are terrified what this development will mean for our homes and our families. We have been battling council on this issue for years and have been completely ignored and are continuing to be completely ignored. If you want this car park to be built, fine. Fix the issues that have existed on this site and the band-aid solutions that have been applied to date. We are begging you not to skirt around this issue. And if it is approved and we do experience the issues that are so obvious to everyone except the people in council, we will be advocating for ourselves loudly and often. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. The next speaker I have listed is Anne Sharp. Is Anne with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Anne. I'm sorry,
right.
I couldn't see. So
I've had it.
thank you.
Oh,
Thank you very
right.
much.
My
Thank you
camera's not
very
right.
much.
But all right,
Thank-
I won't. So I'll just be.
Thank you very much for your time today. And as I mentioned, if you would like to make a presentation for 3 minutes, and then we'll give you a minute longer. But if you want to run over a little, as Nicole did, please don't think we're trying to cut you off deliberately.
Right.
So if you would like to give us your presentation, we have read the submission. It was a late submission.
That was
and
yes.
And I personally have read a copy, and I believe other members of the panel have also seen and read the submission that you have made, and it's been referred to the council officers for their comment as well. So if you'd like to address the panel, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you've read the submission. So I don't probably need to cover all points, but I'll just go to the recommendation is for this deferred commencement consent. Our concern is that this provides no opportunity for public comment on additional information which has the potential to impact on the Curl Creek catchment. The stormwater is relating to the stormwater issues. We're concerned particularly about pollution and turbidity occurring in Curl Creek downstream. There's a very high risk of turbidity where there's excavation and construction, but we're concerned about this. It's important to protect the aquatic habitat downstream in the reserve, and that includes the vegetation. Just to note that in the water management for development policy, Curl Creek catchment is Northern Beach's high quality catchment, and that encompasses this site. So it is warrant consideration for this issue. We also note that in that policy, it mentions that stormwater treatment measures are required to ensure that development does not adversely impact the downstream environment. In terms of erosion and sediment and pollution controls, there's also mentioned that water to be discharged must be tested and, if required, treated to ensure it meets the water quality criteria and the pollution of the receiving waters does not occur. So be surprised there's no internal referral to the catchment people, but possibly that's because it's not near a creek. However, it is certainly affected by the upstream activities that occur on this site. So even though it is not adjacent to the reserve, it is immediately upstream of it. So that's a concern. There should be some reference to that. And we would have liked the opportunity to comment on stormwater issues. In terms of I think the key issues relating to this site for us are the loss of the vegetation and the trees, and particularly that it's got Duffy's Forest endangered ecological community on the site. The significant loss of trees, actually, with 79, only 38 will be retained. The excavation of this of the area for the car park, and the viability of the remaining vegetation will be affected as well, with reduced smaller size, increased exposure, etc., and impacts on the hydrology of the area. There is a percentage of pollutions that will be discharged into the stormwater, in particular an estimated 47% of total nitrogen. That is a concern about water quality. The downstream pond doesn't necessarily treat that impact. That's the pond on the Madison estate. There is reference also in the DCP to there's a Part F, zones and sensitivities. That actually contains the desired future character statement for this area, and it talks about the Indigenous, protecting and enhancing the Indigenous tree canopy and remnant bushland, also the threatened populations, and avoiding impacts on water quality in Manly Dam. These descriptive controls are intended to protect the existing environmental features of the site and the Manly Dam catchment, including tree canopy, remnant bushland, threatened habitats and water quality. That Part F hasn't been mentioned in the assessment, although the assessment does refer to special uses sites, which does have similar clauses in it, but F3 in the Warringah DCP is not specifically mentioned. Just to sum up, really, that
Thank you.
yes, I'll just sum up that we're disappointed really that this area should be chosen for a car park. I mean, a large portion of the overall site is already allocated to car parking, and there doesn't seem to appear to be much consideration of alternatives. From our point of view, you know, car parking can be placed in other locations, but the remnant vegetation and the significance of that site is not relocatable. So thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm sure there'll be some questions that may arise as a result of what you have just indicated. Also, Nick Healy, I believe you're online, Nick. If you are, as the applicant, you would like to address the panel as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nick Healy. I am the project manager for Cerebral Palsy Alliance for this particular project. I won't reiterate what's in the application. You've read that already. I'll just talk about one particular point. In the report that we received recently, it refers to a deferred commencement on the basis that there is no easement in place on the adjoining school land, only a draft easement with the Department of Education. There's some inaccuracies in this comment. Firstly, that the proposed car park is actually to be constructed on lot 9 of DP 1280781. This car park is proposed to connect to an existing graded drain on lot 1 of DP 1280781. So yes, we will be taking a pipe from across lot 1, lot 9 into lot 1. From this existing graded drain, there is an existing stormwater pipe that runs north into lot 3 of DP 1280781, and then this existing stormwater pipe effectively turns west and connects into existing stormwater infrastructure that runs through Madison Way. Important to point out, though, that Cerebral Palsy Alliance is the registered owner of both lot 9 and lot 1. So an easement to facilitate construction of the connection from the car park to the graded drain is unnecessary because they are the owner of both lots of land. The Department of Education is the registered owner of lot 3 in DP 1280871, and there is a proposed easement to drain water to be placed on lot 3 that generally follows the existing stormwater infrastructure that goes from lot 1, lot 8 and lot 9, as well as lot 7, which is owned by the Department of Education now, and that's the infrastructure I referred to earlier that runs eventually through Madison Way. There is heads of agreement between Cerebral Palsy Alliance and the Department of Education that agrees that these easements are to be created. The formal creation of these easements is underway, but given that the proposed easements referred to on page 20 are over existing infrastructure, not new infrastructure, we do not agree that a deferred commencement is necessary. Deferred commencements are commonly used where there may be uncertainty over whether a precursor for a development is able to occur. This is not the case here. The infrastructure is existing. So we suggest instead that a condition of creation of easement prior to the issue of a construction certificate is utilised. I'm happy to answer any particular questions, but that is as much as I wanted to say today.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the panel. Initially, panel, are there any questions that you have of the initial speakers to Nicole or Anne?
I just wanted to, well, maybe Glynis, if you go first.
Okay.
I was just going to ask a question around what Ms. Davey mentioned through you, Chair, about the car parking. My understanding is that there is a loss of existing car parking as a consequence of the new school that's going into place. So maybe if you could talk to that.
Yeah.
And then also just a little bit more, Mr. Healy, around, sorry, I meant a question for Mr. Healy, around the particular uses around the cerebral palsy. Ms. Davies noted, I think, that it was office type uses, which wasn't my understanding. So if you could just give a bit more information around that. I have also seen the SCT report to that as well.
Happy to. As you may be aware, the Cerebral Palsy Alliance were the owners of, and I don't have the lot number because it has changed, but the block of land to the north of them, and that was compulsorily purchased by the Department of Education. Cerebral Palsy Alliance had approximately 40 to 50 car spaces on that block. Those 60 car spaces, I should say, on that block. And with the loss of those car spaces, we have had to work out other solutions to maintain at least the similar amount of cars that we had previously. We've looked at some of the existing car park, and we've realigned some car spaces within the existing car parks to afford us a few additional car spaces here and there. But in the end of the day, we were short by around about 70 to 80 car spaces. So we've identified that the 3 cottages would be a suitable site. The reason why they are suitable is because those 3 cottages are unsuitable for continued use by people with disabilities. Cerebral Palsy Alliance has just expended close to $22 million in constructing 7 new group homes around the Northern Beaches area, where people with disabilities will go, and where the buildings are specifically designed for those people. Those 3 cottages are inappropriate for the provision of disability care.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
was that question directed to me as well? Sorry.
Yes.
No, it was to the applicant. Sorry.
So
So-
thank you, Kate. Any further comments or questions to?
Yeah, I've got a question, Chairman. Nick, I didn't hear a clarification on the breakup of the current usage of the site. There was a claim made before by Nicole that it's all administration and executive, and there are no care provisions on the site. Is that the case?
No, that's not correct. So, if you look at the site as a total, if we look, there's 3 specific services occurring on that site. One is within the old Vinay Burge building, which is down the bottom south, and that's basically a daycare program where people with disabilities come into the site and I won't go what exactly occurs with there, but it's a program for provision of care to people with disabilities during the day. Then there's the Thornton Centre, which is further up the hill, close to where the swimming pool is. And that offers a similar daycare program, but it's more specifically attuned to NDIS responses. The swimming pool itself provides specific provision for those with a disability to use aquatic facilities, and which they're not ably catered for in a lot of other swimming pools around the area. And lastly, within the head office building itself, yes, there is administration purposes there, but it's an area where there's a large sports facility for those with a disability. In fact, there's a couple of people there who are actually competing at the Paralympics right now, who are based in that sports facility there, and that's where they do their training and work as part of the program with CPA. CPA also run a workshop where they basically fit out wheelchairs and other equipment as required to people with disabilities. Thirdly, they provide occupation and therapy services to families in the area. So a lot of families drive. They have to drive because they've got children with disabilities or other family members. They park. They use the facility. And on a given day, Mondays is quite quiet. But if you ever go there on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, there's a lot of people there using the facilities there. And then lastly, of course, there is administration. Yes, there are some administrative services, but it's not the primary purpose of the building. It's just a use of the building. I should also mention the fact that there's a lot of meeting space there, which is used for training for government bodies and other bodies to explain really what cerebral palsy is and what other disabilities are and how they interact with different services. So it's used quite extensively by government, council, and other bodies.
So have you got an approximate percentage of the?
I don't have it on me, Phil, but I can happily send that to you. Yes, I'll provide that to Megan if I can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Adam, are you connected with us at the moment?
Hi, Mr.
Hello?
Chair. Good afternoon, panel.
Yes, just I wonder, the diagram that went up earlier with the car parking, could you just reiterate or summarize the numbers and the way in which that car parking has been presented to us earlier today?
Certainly. I'll just share my screen. I'll just get the right document open.
So I would then confirm with Nick that this is in fact the situation that exists.
So it's comparable. I'll share first with you, panel, the diagram that that Kate, panel member, had up on the screen. The application as amended proposes 69 car spaces down in this area down here, which is adjacent to Madison Way, which is replacing 60 informal car spaces up in the Department of Education site. Now, if I just swap screen for a moment, I'll put that into context with an aerial photograph. What it's doing is it's taking car parking up in this section of the site and then relocating it down here to the dwellings, or to where the dwellings are and where this vegetation is.
And so the numbers involved in this?
There's 69 car spaces proposed in the amended application down in this vicinity here, and that's to replace 60 car spaces that were provided up in this area up where the new high school's being built.
So it's a net of 9.
It is an extra 9 car spaces. Yeah, there's an increase in 9 car spaces.
Of 9 car spaces. Fine.
That's correct.
That's useful information. Thank you very much. The other request I have is that obviously the major, or one of the major issues with this project or the proposal, is the resolution of stormwater. And earlier today, you gave a presentation with some images that I would find very useful for them to be put up, if you could please, and talk to them.
Certainly happy to do so. I'll share my screen again, and apologies to everyone. I will share multiple screens, so I'll jump in and out as I go through this brief explanation. I'll start first and foremost with the stormwater plan, and this is the stormwater plan for the proposed car park. What it shows is a series of pipes and pits that collect stormwater from the hard stand areas of the car park and directs those stormwater flows to an on-site stormwater detention. That the purpose of this on-site stormwater detention system is to detain water within the car park or within a tank that it's below ground, so that the discharge from the car park is representative of the same discharge that would occur in a natural state, i.e. there is no development and it's in effect natural land. From there, the land, as was described by Mr. Healy, discharges from the on-site stormwater detention system and does so and connects into an existing stormwater line that is in the existing driveway. And I'll just change screens for a moment. Just to put that into perspective, that on this aerial photograph would see stormwater discharged out of the OSD system into a stormwater pit that is approximately where my cursor is, and that existing stormwater line would then continue towards the north up to what is Madison Way, and then discharge into Madison Way. And if I put that, and I'll stop sharing and I'll reshare, to put that into a context from a subdivision point of view, you would have the stormwater discharging from this bottom lot, which is lot 1, into lot 2. And to Mr. Healy's point, in respect to the deferred commencement, it would necessitate the creation of an easement over this portion here of existing pipe to connect into the existing drainage easement, which is demarcated as D on the DP, which then discharges into Madison Way, which is a public road. Another matter that I'll just briefly take the panel to that is consistent with my presentation earlier relates to the treatment of stormwater. The OSD system, and I'll just bring it up on the screen. Bear with me, panel, jumping between multiple screens. The OSD system includes a storm filter cartridge system. I have it just up here. This is a cross section of the OSD. It proposes a storm filter cartridge system, the purpose of which is to do 4 things. It's to reduce gross pollutants, reduction in total nitrogen, total phosphates, and total suspended solids. And in relation to those targets, the storm filter cartridges would treat the stormwater to the extent that there'd be a 90% reduction in gross pollutants greater than 5 millimetres in size. There'd be an 85% reduction in total suspended solids. There'd be a 65% reduction in total phosphorus and a 45% reduction in total nitrogen. So stormwater leaving the site is in a clean state. And those thresholds are set within Council's water management policy and have been verified by a music model that has been prepared by the applicant.
Thank you. So, Adam, does that in your mind mean that the stormwater management will improve or address the issues that have been raised by some of the residents in Madison Way?
In Council's view, yes, insofar that you'll have stormwater for the car park collected and captured in a way that directs it to an on-site stormwater detention system. That on-site stormwater detention system designed for a 1 in 100 year storm event. So meaning that up into a 1 in 100 year storm event, stormwater discharging from the site would be representative of the same discharge as the site being in a natural state. But importantly, that stormwater discharge is going through an existing series of pipes. And so that stormwater will remain in effect in a pipe system. It is also important to note that given that we are connecting into an existing pipe system, that the OSD has been sized to accommodate that existing pipe size and is also mindful and designed again to accommodate the existing flows within those stormwater pipes.
So Adam, to what extent do you have overflows? Under what conditions would the stormwater system that you've described, which seems quite adequate, in what conditions wouldn't that work? In what conditions would you get overflow through the car park and into the properties on the downside?
The stormwater system is designed to cater for up into a 1 in 100 year rain event, which means, and just for an example of that, and what that means is that in effect, there's a 1% chance that you'll get a rainfall event that it's a 1 in 100 year storm. If I think back to the advice I've been given by Council's engineers, the rain events that we had in March 2022, where there was quite significant rain in the Northern Beaches, particularly in this area, if I think about some of the blockages that occurred on the Roseville Bridge, that was not a 1 in 100 year rainfall event. So you would need to get a rainfall event that would be greater in significance than that. I'll reshare my screen for a moment. So in the event that we do get a scenario whereby there is a rainfall event and the pipes and pits do what they need to do and they direct the stormwater to the OSD tank, in the event that the tank reaches its capacity, as you'll see at this point here, there is an overflow weir that allows water to go uncontrolled through the pipe. In that scenario, yes, there would be water going into the pipe that would more likely exceed the capacity of that pipe. But I would dare say, in my experience, that the capacity of that pipe would have already been exceeded. It is standard engineering practice to design OSD systems for 1 in 100 year events.
Adam, what's your response to Nick's request about the deferred commencement condition? Do you consider that to be appropriate or not?
It is standard practice that where you have a easement to be created, be it over theoretical or existing stormwater lines, that it's done as a deferred commencement, so that easement is in place before the consent is active. It shouldn't hold up Mr. Healy's intended construction timeline, in that once the easement is registered and secured, those title documents would be provided to the council. The council then can provide an operable consent. However, and notwithstanding that, there'd be nothing preventing Mr. Healy from actively working on the other conditions of consent that need to be satisfied prior to the issue of a construction certificate. So in effect, soon thereafter, once an operational consent is issued by the council, when it is issued, pretty much soon after, they could get a construction certificate as well.
So Adam, to what extent would there be any notification to the community of this process? Because that's as expressed, or concern that was expressed by the previous speakers.
The stormwater, the information that council would receive in the event that the deferred commencement consent is satisfied is technical in nature, insofar that it's title documents that just demonstrate that there's a right for drainage to occur in the intended method. It wouldn't change or alter or modify the way in which drainage occurs, nor would it change the method in which stormwater is treated or otherwise managed for the site.
And so you're saying also the quality of the stormwater is treated significantly in the process?
The quality of the storm,
the impact. Sorry.
The quality of the stormwater is treated as a consequence of its capture in the as part of the OSD system. It is not related to the title documents or association with the deferred commencement. It is part of the stormwater design. But I can confirm that the treatment of the stormwater is to a threshold that is consistent with council's water management policy.
Thank you. I think this clarifies a number of the issues that the panel were wishing to understand further. Are there any other comments or questions from the panel to either Mr. Healy or to the other speakers, to Anne or Nicole?
No, thank you.
I just have one. There was a comment made by, I think, Ms. Sharp, about the loss of biodiversity and significant trees and so on. Could council please comment on that situation, please?
Happily, through you, Chair. Yes, the application does include the removal of partial removal of an endangered ecological community. That ecological community is identified as the Sydney Coastal Sandstone Bloodwood Forest, which is part of the wider Duffy's Forest ecological community, and Duffy's Forest in itself is nominated as a endangered ecological community, or better known as an EEC. As a consequence, the application was accompanied by a BDAR, or Biodiversity Development Assessment Report, and that report assesses the impact of the loss of biodiversity consistent with the criteria set within the Biodiversity Conservation Act. That ecological impact is significant enough to necessitate mitigation measures, and those mitigation measures in this instance primarily focus on the retirement of species credits under the Biodiversity Conservation Act. That BDAR has been prepared by an accredited ecological consultant under the Biodiversity Conservation Act, and has been reviewed and vetted by council's ecological and bushland staff. So yes, it is acknowledged that there is a loss of biodiversity, but the mitigation measures recommended within the consent, that the majority of which fall out of the BDAR, are found to be acceptable and sufficiently offset that loss.
Thank you, Adam. Just finally, just very briefly, Nicole or Anne, would you like to please very briefly make some comment, because I guess the information that has been presented today and some of the material has, for me and I think some of the panel members, clarified a number of the concerns that have been expressed, and hopefully it's seen that this is an attempt to communicate and also provide absolute transparency in the process that is happening. So if you, for just a minute or so, would like to make any observations on the process or the discussions and the information that's come today, which I think has clarified car numbers quite genuinely, and clarified the proposed stormwater management and the biodiversity activities. So just if you would like to briefly comment.
Two things, Chair. The 60 car spaces were informal spaces. They're not spaces that were ever assigned to the site. And the council report actually says that given the amount of office space that is on the site that they have, it is an over provision by 51 spaces. That is in council's own report, but that is also based on the fact that they have assigned a swimming pool as an office. So at the very least, even if you want additional car parking, 69 spaces is just a gross over provision of what is needed. I would also encourage you to follow up with the amount of actual admin that goes on there versus disability services. As I said, we're not against development, but we just want it to be practical and honest. And the other thing I would say is, we are very nervous about all of the promises we are given from council, from stormwater, because we have seen this show before. So, and while the car park, on the surface looks fine, we are concerned that the drain is still upstream from where surface water will ultimately get to, and we are not satisfied that the car park will also only drain into the drains that are within the car park, and also particularly the large sloping footpath and associated works that are going up to the top of the site, where all of that I cannot see in the plans, we cannot see in the plans where all of that water is being adequately drained to, and it will continue to drain to the back of our homes. That is our fear, and we do not feel like this has been adequately addressed, or that we've been able to work with council or CPA, quite frankly, to ease any of those concerns, which is completely consistent with how we've been treated by council and CPA for the last number of years.
Thank you. And Anne, if you're still with us, if you have any comments.
Yes, I just wondered with the on-site detention, whether that allows for the low flow. This is in with the stormwater. And the water quality targets, they do comply with the council policy. However, they still allow quite a bit of nitrogen. The reduction is only 45% with nitrogen. Given the sensitivity of the catchment, and also the fact that there are further requirements in the DCP and probably the LEP in relation to protecting the site, the special features of the site, I just wonder about the impact of that. Also, again, there's no reference to safeguards, if you like, to prevent erosion, to take specific measures or special measures to prevent erosion and causing turbidity downstream. It has been a real problem with development, with erosion, the siltation causing turbidity in the creek. So that's an issue. In terms of the vegetation, we remain concerned about the viability of the remnant. And we certainly don't support the loss of the endangered plant community, because there's not a lot of it. It's hard to offset. So, that's an issue, but also the viability of what's left will be reduced. So that's a concern. I just still feel that maybe other, that's all. Thank you.
And thank you for your additional comments. Does the panel have any other comments or questions before we move on to the next item? But obviously there'll be significant further discussion when we meet later to consider this. I've found this meeting hopefully very informative and transparent in trying to communicate information and to understand some of the issues that have been raised by the community, but equally by Nick in the desire to achieve something that will make his operation more operable and more satisfactory. So Thank you all for your patience on this item. I understand the sensitivity. I think the panel equally is aware and has spent significant amounts of time understanding the challenges, and hopefully we can come to a solution which is acceptable to everyone and in fact creates a better outcome than we had hoped for before. So thank you all for your time on this issue, and this matter will be discussed further and a resolution will appear on the council website within 48 hours.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. All right. So the next item is item number 4.3. 4.3 is for Carlo Parade in Newport. We have speakers that wish to address the panel. There's Michael Wood from 7 Carlo, Angus James from 7A Carlo, speaking as objectors, and then Mr. Dave Moody, who I believe is the town planner for the applicant, wishes to speak in support. And I think the owner, Mr. James Algar, also wishes to address the panel. So are they all present at the moment?
I have everyone, Chair. I need to call Mr. Wood into the meeting. So when you're ready for him to address, I will phone him through.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Thank you. Well, Mr. Wood is from number 7 Carlo, so perhaps if you can connect him up, that would be good.
Of course, I'll call him now.
This is a DA. It is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. And if Mr. Wood is available, we could listen to him, please.
Hello, Mr. Wood. I'm going to leave you in the hands of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel.
Good afternoon, Michael Wood speaking. Good afternoon.
Mr. Wood, I'm sorry, you're becoming a bit distorted on. Yeah, that's better. If you could address the, sorry, thank you. If you'd like to address the panel, we've received the submissions. Yes. There were 3 which I have read through, quite comprehensive submissions. So if you'd like to briefly speak to them rather than yes. Refer to them in total detail, as you would be aware, if you could restrict your presentation to 3 minutes and then potentially sure. Have an additional minute for just to sum up.
Okay. Look, well, thank you for the opportunity for me to talk to you. I appreciate, as you say, with only 3 minutes, I don't want to laboriously go through a lot of detail. So that's hence the reason for preparing the report, which includes all the information we felt that was relevant to the responding to the assessment by council. Just in starting, just to commence the discussion, again, rather than receive submissions from every adjoining landowner here and complicate it by volumes of information, we decided that it was appropriate that one report be prepared, and that report has been endorsed by the owners of 5, 7A, 9, 9A, 9B, and also this morning number 11 have also endorsed the report. So I thought that was beneficial for the panel to have a consolidated submission rather than multiple submissions. The other reason was there's such a lot of volume of information that's been presented over the course of the last few months. I felt it was logical to present the report in a concise manner, which made it easier to reference a lot of the information that's been submitted. So, high level, both council and ourselves, through the engagement of independent consultants, have determined there's been a number of prescriptive breaches of the controls. So as far as that's concerned, I don't believe there's any dispute. However, where the difference lies is the assessment report has outlined that the even though the prescriptive breaches have occurred, that the outcomes of the controls have been satisfied. I guess that's the difference where we based on the information we've received from our independent consultants and our own observations, we're of the view that the outcomes have not been fully satisfied. The other point I'd like to draw to the panel is the report by council indicates that all of the comments, objections have been fully satisfied as a consequence of the report. Again, we don't believe that's completely true. Yes, a number of items have been addressed, but there's been a number of items that have not been addressed. So we wanted to bring that to the panel's attention in respect of the items that we felt had not been addressed. For example, there's no architectural roof plan. One of the conditions has not been addressed in respect of the solar panels and lift overrun, which relates to the roof plan. We felt that was a key component of the assessment which hasn't been addressed. We believe that solar access hasn't, there's another couple of, in regard to privacy, solar access, we have some concerns that they haven't been fully addressed. And just in a way, the view loss was assessed. We have had some comments on how those principles have been implemented in respect of their assessment criteria. The owner of Hugh Somerville, the owner of number 11, he just sent me an email this morning. And if I can just read from that, he just wanted to convey to the panel, which is being included in my report, that he's concerned about the bulk and scale and the view sharing. He feels that the applicant has full panoramic views of the beach and headlands, and that the proposed development is going to diminish his view and at the benefit of the applicant. So look, I don't know how much more detail you want me to go through. One particular issue in respect of the landscaping ratio, we don't agree with the logic that's been used there in taking away the right of carriageway. The right of carriageway is actually being used by the applicant in respect of it's a driveway to get into the property and the turning circle. That's a very integrated part of the development. So it's not like the right of carriageway is at the rear of his property that he can't use. It's an integrated part of his development. So the logic of taking that away from the landscape area is not something we support. In regard to, I mean, just as feedback from the panel, is there any questions that the panel would like me to clarify on behalf of the
what I'm going to do is, Michael, what I'm going to do is to let the other speakers also contribute, and then we'll take questions, etc., from the panel rather than break it up. So is Angus James with us at the moment?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Angus, if you wouldn't mind, as I mentioned, you probably heard earlier, if you could just present to us for 3 minutes plus a summation for an additional minute of the issues without necessarily going through the same issues that we've already heard from Michael.
No, that's understood, Chair. So, as I say, Michael's report has the support of my wife, who's the property owner, and we endorse it. The 3 points that I wanted to raise very quickly was, first of all, stormwater. So in terms of the property on the southeast, southwest or south side of the development, there's a yoga studio. In that yoga studio, there's going to be hard surfaces underneath gardens, and there's going to be a more or enhanced stormwater. The applicant has the stormwater draining into a sewage pipe currently, which is on the driveway. which accesses my property. I don't believe that complies. And I think what needs to happen there is there needs to be retention tanks inserted in the yoga studio area to slow the flow of water, which will have to be released down dish drains down the right of footway and drainage, which goes down into Betty Morrison Reserve. So that'd be kind of my first point. The second point, which Mike Woods has alluded to, is the bulk of the whole development, particularly as it relates to the usage of the landscape versus impervious sort of areas. The yoga studio is 78 square metres, and by virtue of the fact it has a metre of soil on top of it, is not counted as part of the development in terms of the impervious areas. Its footings go into the setback. Its eaves go over into the setback. And as I say, at it's something between 2 metres to 5 metres above natural ground levels. And I just don't understand why that's not a building. It just doesn't make sense to me, even though it's got a metre of soil and landscaping on the top of it. It just seems to me that when you combine that with the whole development, there's a substantive amount of area which is used for impervious type structures. I'd also say that around that yoga studio, there's no decking, there's no walkways, there's none of the things you would actually expect under the shower that people would naturally expect, so you can gain entry into the yoga studio, etc. Again, I think it's been done to sort of maximise the landscaped areas and minimise the impervious areas. My last point would be around building cost. I am really concerned about having a stranded construction site in the middle of this residential area. The applicant says that it's a cost of $1.8 million to build it, which would be around 2,300, 400 square metres per square build area. I know that I built my house 20 years ago for 4,000 per square metre. So I just don't think that's a realistic assessment. And I actually know people in the local community who are in the neighbourhood are building similar sorts of houses to the applicants suggesting, which is a lovely looking house at $10,000 to $11,000 a square metre. So my concern is that there's not a good understanding of sort of how much it's going to cost to develop the site, and if halfway through something occurs where it becomes uncommercial for the applicant or something else occurs, we have a stranded building site in the middle of our area. So I suggest that we probably need something which ensures that we can protect runoff, etc., if the building stops halfway through, in terms of some sort of substantive bond which could be used to make sure that no water or other debris flows down a very aggressive slope. The slope to my building is very large, and I am concerned about water management and other management issues. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And as I say, I think in summary, all the residents are very happy for James to build his house that he wants to build, but just having a sort of balance of some of those issues that we've talked about in our submissions would be good. Thank you.
Angus, thank you very much for your time and for your comments. I believe Dave Moody, we have Dave online, and he represents the owner and is the planner.
Correct. Good afternoon, Chair and panel. Hi, can you hear me there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. I couldn't hear you initially for a moment, but now thank you very much.
Great. Okay, so yeah, as you noted,
to address the panel and possibly address some of the issues that have been raised by the objectors in the previous presentations.
Yep. So as noted, I was the town planner for the applicant, and I was going to touch on 4 items today. The first being the unique, sensitive nature of the site. The second being the non-compliances. The third being potential privacy impacts, and the fourth focusing on view loss. So straight away, initial site inspection noted that it was a sensitive design was going to be required, and that's due to the steeply sloping nature of the hillside surrounding the site, The lot's orientation, which runs north to south, when the majority of adjoining properties run east to west. Being a battle axe allotment, we've got 8 other residential dwellings adjoining our lot, and it's further constrained due to the shared driveway / right of carriageway, which cuts through the southern portion of the site and runs right down to 9A and 9B Beach Road. Despite the challenges faced due to the site conditions, the proposed design generally achieves compliance with all relevant development standards, and for the most part, the planning controls as well, aside from the variations I'll run through now. So at lower ground and ground floor, the proposed eastern wall of the garage is set back over 1 metre in lieu of the required 2.5 metres. However, I note that this element is located partially below ground level, and furthermore, the proposed roof form of the garage is in keeping with the proposed ground floor level of the dwelling. This is shown on the ground floor plan, and in addition to that, we have incorporated a non-trafficable green roof, ensuring that the terrace and pool deck are set back 2.5 metres from that boundary. I note the proposed swimming pool extends, it's got a 1.46 metre setback. However, council's planning controls allow for variation up to a metre setback for the swimming pools. Furthermore, I note the southeastern facade of the dwelling at ground floor is actually set back 5 metres from the boundary. So it's only the balconies which are protruding forward. The actual built form itself is set back 5 metres from that boundary. At first floor, the only breaching element of the side setback control is a green edge along the alfresco balcony. And all trafficable areas, again, it complies with the 2.5 metre setback. And again, at first floor, the southeastern facade of the dwelling is set back 5 metres from that boundary. In relation to the building envelope control, as evidenced in the cross section 1, 2 and 3, the proposed design complies with council's building envelope, aside from a minor portion of the balustrade, noting that eaves are permitted to extend outside of the building envelope. Furthermore, again, at this first floor, this southeastern facade is set back 5 metres from that side boundary. In terms of privacy impacts, the architectural plan incorporated a number of drawings, DA 21, 22 and 23, confirming the lack of unreasonable privacy impacts to adjoining properties. I note that all the surrounding properties are orientated to the east to capture the ocean views, and the proposed overlooking will remain consistent with the existing overlooking, being limited to driveways, garages and the roof form of 9A and 9B Beach Road. I note that there are minimal window openings in those facades looking back up slope, and it is not considered that the proposed development will result in unreasonable overlooking impacts to habitable rooms or private open spaces. Now, in terms of view loss, we're aware from the outset that a sensitive design was required due to the potential for unreasonable view loss. Due to this, prior to DA lodgement, we organised site inspections of number 7, number 9 and number 11. And I attended those properties both inside and within their private open space areas and took photographs, which were then provided to the architect along with the survey levels to prepare a draft design. We then erected height poles based on that draft design, and I attended the properties again to take photographs of these height poles, and this was all prior to DA lodgement occurring. As a result of the photographs that I took of the height poles, we reduced the bulk and scale of the development and amended the roof form to ensure there was no unreasonable view loss. That set of plans was what was lodged with council, the amended design, and that's reflected in the photographs Nick Keeler took during his view loss inspection. In terms of Nick's view loss inspection, we know even those height poles that are evident in the photographs that Nick's taken, the current design before the panel has been further amended again and reduced. I'd like to request that the full set of photographs that Nick Keeler took should be referred to, as we want to avoid any confusion with previous height poles erected, which represent a development that was not lodged with council. So the current design before the panel represents a further reduction compared to the height poles evident in Nick Keeler's photographs. The eastern extent of the roof form has been set back an additional 1.52 metres, along with other changes to the balconies. So the height pole diagrams that were before the panel have been prepared to assist the panel in interpreting the most recent set of height poles with the current amended design. I note that Nick Keeler has confirmed some comments made in my recent submission in his supplementary memo uploaded onto the DA tracker this morning. I particularly note his advice that the levels of view loss allocated in his report have been further reduced under the current amended design. And I quote, "View impact measured as moderate based on the original proposal will be lessened to minor under the amended proposal." So based on the steps taken, the amendments we've made, and in light of the expansive panoramic views which are maintained, we're of the opinion that the proposed development does not result in unreasonable view loss and would like to see the development approved in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure, but I believe that the owner wished to address the committee as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, panel. Thank you for your time today. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was just checking to make sure they had the right person. So anyway, if you would like to address the panel, and as you probably understood, 3 minutes with a warning and then potentially a summing up for an additional minute.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Look, I'm representing today, the house is in my wife's name, but as a couple, it's our home. I just want to reiterate some of what Dave said around the extensive steps we've gone through to try and limit the impact around the entire view loss scenario, and the many steps we took to engage with the neighbours upslope from us on multiple occasions. And look, without going into detail, some of the breakdown in that communication when we were trying to attempt to take additional photos from a number of the neighbouring properties was challenging, including a number of occasions where neighbours wanted us to wait until things like trees were trimmed or other limitations on access to take that. So we've made a significant effort to, this is our home, we want to live here, I'm not a property developer. Touching one other thing that just to reiterate the boundary question in terms of setback on the eastern boundary, that presentation downslope of our garage, which is the only item that potentially is beyond that setback, actually from downslope presents as being below the existing ground level. So, you know, essentially an objection to that is it's hard to understand because we've supplied some photos. I think everyone's seen that evident. Those other items submitted a few days ago clearly show that area of the property, the new development, is below or more or less below the previous ground level or the existing ground level. So, as Dave said already, we made significant reductions in the built in the design for the bulk and scale prior to lodgement the first time, and that was a direct result of the potential impact of the height poles with our original design. So we've made significant concessions, compromises to try and meet not just the building envelope requirements, but also limit the impact on our neighbours. Without going into it, look, there's been a number of questions around failure to comply with the landscaped area controls. I would add that even just a simple look on Google Maps would tell you that most of the adjoining properties are substantially smaller percentage of landscaped areas. Indeed, there are a couple of properties that border mine that are closer to a 10 or 15% landscaped area, and there seems to be a lot of questions around that seem unfair. In response to the question of the use of the right of carriageway, and that we've integrated that into the design of our property, well, the truth is we had no choice. The right of carriageway exists there. We might not have integrated it into our design had it not had to remain. So I think there's a number of other designs we could have adopted if we didn't need to maintain that right of carriageway, which, you know, seems a ridiculous conversation in my view. The other question around studio runoff, look, I have no objection to having the studio connected to an on-site detention tank if council deems that necessary. I would point out that the southern portion of that property as it stands today has a significant hard standing area, and in total, in line with council's rules around what counts as a landscaped area, we're actually providing a greater landscaped area on that southern end of the property than exists today. So I fail to understand the argument about increasing runoff around that. So looking really, you know, it is my home. I'm passionate about it. We've spent a lot of time and energy getting to this point, and yeah, we'd like to get the panel's consent to this to move on. One final point around the quantity surveyor report. Look, that was prepared by an external quantity surveyor. I work in the finance industry. I would hate to think that there was an insinuation that there wasn't an adequate buffer in terms of our budget planning. this isn't the first property I've owned and lived in and had extensive works carried out on. It would be a shame if the insinuation was I wasn't in a financial position to cope with a change in budget. I run a very successful mortgage business. I'm very familiar with what goes on and making sure that you don't engage in on project without making sure you have the financial means to complete it in any event. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you.
James, thank you very much. Thank you. And before I throw it back to the panel, just one request. Nick, could you find, please, and put on the screen the section that we looked at a little earlier?
Yep, not a problem. I'll get that up for you now.
If you would. The reason for that is to understand the extent to which the latest, and I say that we're aware there have been any number of minor changes, the latest section to understand the actual extent to which there is compliance or not compliance with the heights, because obviously the height of the building is going to be very much part of the whole issue of view sharing. So if this is the latest drawing, Nick, would you like to talk through to us, please, what this represents? And I think there was a partial elevational study as well.
Yeah, so obviously as part of the assessment of the application and the conducting of view loss inspections of the neighbouring properties, council requested further reduction in the roof above this upper floor alfresco, as well as setting back that alfresco to comply, at least the trafficable portion of the alfresco, to the 2.5 metre minimum setback requirement. As can be seen in these cross sections based on survey data that was also provided with these amended plans, that change now complies with the building envelope. The only minor breach is for an eave element here, which is permissible under the control. There is a slight breach of the balustrade here, but it's a glass balustrade and effectively causes no additional built form issues. So that's not a concern from the building envelope point of view. So this is a critical change in the fact that specifically to built form and view loss, the reduction in these elements will improve the impact or reduce the extent of impact on views from properties to the west, especially those from 9 and 11, and then reduce the visual dominance of the structure when viewed from the lower properties to the east.
So just to be very clear, the dotted red line represents the control. Yeah.
Correct.
Can you? Yeah. And so that is the latest drawing, which has been used to compile the report that you've done. So
Correct.
effectively,
This is
the envelope you had an elevational drawing too, which showed a very minor non-compliance.
Yeah. So the only non-compliance in building envelope occurs on the western elevation, where the stairwell juts out from the most of the facade. The extent of envelope non-compliance here is very minor, keeping in mind that the calculation is based on the existing ground level, which is where this green dotted line is. So the actual extent of non-compliance is very minor in the context of the development.
Thank you. I'll open it up then to other members of the panel if they have questions or comments they'd like to make. But that, I believe, is that section, then the latest, is a fairly important issue for us to understand in more detail.
Chair, could I ask a couple of questions?
I'm sorry, who's this?
It's Glenys.
Thank you, Gladys. Yes.
Just the objector raised concerns about water management onto the property at 7A. Could I have a response from the applicant's consultant about that and how it will actually be managed?
So we submitted an amended stormwater design prepared by Taylor's Engineering. It incorporated OSD, rainwater tanks. It's been designed to comply. So we're confident in the design that our civil engineers prepared.
Can I contribute to the meeting at this point, please?
So who is this, please?
It's Michael Wood here. So look,
Yes, Mike.
just in regard to the detail, the OSD tank intercepts flows from the main dwelling, but it does not capture any flows from the lower part of the site because it's too high because of the levels of where it's located. We challenged to where the OSD tank was going to be located, and thankfully it's now being recommended that it goes within the building rather than being placed on the boundary line. I know, I respect that it was designed by a qualified hydraulic consultant, but it appeared, just from a layman's perspective, that the amount of detention allowed within the tank seemed quite low for what we would have anticipated. But I guess I would just like to comment if that could be verified, that the capacity of that tank is adequate.
I guess, Michael, also the suggestion about there being a stormwater tank or a storage tank in the studio area is something that should be taken into consideration as well. And my understanding is that the applicant is quite happy for that to be included as a condition as well.
Okay, yep, that makes sense.
So, I mean, I think the whole issue of stormwater, if you start to include the additional storage capacity that would happen with the studio, then it may in fact address the issue you're raising.
Chair, it's Angus James. I would agree with that, but I would take issue with the consultant's view that the current water management is correct, because, as I say, it in substance it drains into a sewage pipe.
Angus, hopefully we can overcome that problem of.
May I provide clarification on that matter, just in relation to what type of infrastructure that is, based on council's mapping, which I'll share with you now, and I'm sure the applicant's engineers have reviewed as well. Oops, sorry, wrong screen there. So this is a view of council's mapping. It indicates that this pipeline that does cross 7A Beach Road is a council stormwater asset, not a sewer asset. So it is consistent for the disposal of stormwater through the OSD system.
Yeah, Nick, but the problem you've got is the current diagram draws it into the sewerage pipe, which is in the middle of the driveway, and not into that, which is on my property, which is on the Gibson property, etc., and not in that pit is not actually in the right of way and the right of drainage area. So that's what I'm saying. It's not drawn correctly at the moment. And if you go down there and have an inspection, you'll see it's got written on the lid, sewer. So I'm just telling you that it's not correct at the moment.
Maybe the applicant can provide info in regard to that.
Well, yeah, I guess we were made aware of these concerns and provided that to the civil engineer who, with additional survey information input from council, prepared the design. So we're relying on a civil engineer to advise us that this design complies, and we proceeded with confidence based on that. We can speak to him further to get that reconfirmed, but that was the design provided by the civil engineer.
But the issue of stormwater, I think, maybe is something we've now come to some future resolution by incorporating an additional tank anyway. So that's something which we can, as a panel, discuss afterwards.
Understood.
Are there any other questions or comments from the panel to the applicant?
Mr. Chair, I also have another question about construction traffic. If we could, and it's such a constrained site with constrained access and the impact of the right of way. So I'm just wondering how the applicant intends to actually functionally achieve control of construction vehicles so it doesn't inconvenience other people and it's safe for all users of the surrounding area.
Well, depending on the owner, I'm sure we'd be happy to impose a condition of consent requiring a traffic management plan to be prepared prior to construction certificate for the approval of council. There's a lot of constrained sites on the northern beaches with difficult access, so it's not going to be out of the ordinary for this one. That they'll be able to come up to a plan to make it comply. And as I said, we're happy to get further approval before CC stage.
So, is there a condition already? This is to Nick. Nick, is there a condition that there is to be a CTMP at this stage or not?
Correct. So condition 23 has been recommended for the applicant to prepare a comprehensive construction management traffic plan, which is to be prepared by a qualified person by Transport for New South Wales and submitted to Council's transport team for approval prior to the issue of the construction certificate. And that condition goes into pretty significant detail of what's required in that plan to ensure that impact upon the right of carriageway and the constructability, I guess, or the operations during construction is not going to unreasonably impact upon the site, the neighbouring sites, and the surrounding road network.
I mean, I think Glennis's question is a very significant one. Also, is there a condition which requires a waste management plan to be prepared?
There are two conditions that have been imposed. A waste management plan was received as part of the lodgement documentation. That plan satisfies Council's waste management guidelines, and conditions have been recommended to require implementation of that waste management plan, condition 34. And then condition 43 requires confirmation provided to the certifier that the waste management strategies were implemented during construction prior to the issue of an OC.
So a question to the owner or the applicant or his planner. Are you aware and happy to accept all these conditions? Obviously, they are critical because having inspected the site, I think the panel is aware of the challenges that will happen if this is to be constructed. And I guess the extent to which any inconvenience is going to be caused and the need potentially for a very significant dilapidation report to be prepared for the properties that are adjoining and have access to this site.
As the town planner, I don't have an objection to any of the conditions proposed. I'll let James answer as the owner.
Sorry. No, I'm happy to accept any reasonable conditions implied to make sure my neighbours are well protected. We've already completed a dilapidation report on the driveway, which I know was submitted, but happy to get that updated if the sense is it's not sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if this were to be approved and there is then construction, as an area it's going to be, or as a precinct, it's going to be a challenge. And so these conditions, I think, are critical to be not only just accepted, but enforced in a way which is going to mean that all of the adjoining neighbours can still have a lifestyle, which is what they're accustomed to. And so I'm pleased to hear that, one, you understand the conditions, and two, that you're prepared to accept them. Does the panel have any other comments or questions?
Yes, Chairman. I was just wondering about the height poles that we saw in our report. Were they the latest? I mean, given that there've been 3 different amendments, as I understand it, that we've been talking about today, are the height pole photos that we've assessed the latest? Are they based on the latest design?
Okay, so the height poles evident in the photograph, they represent the design as lodged under the DA, not the current further reduced plans before the panel today. So the roof form has been reduced by an additional 1.5 metres, and this is why we've prepared this document. So this document shows the height poles as shown in the photograph, overlaid with the current amended design, which shows a reduced built form.
So I think, Phil, I've just popped this up on the screen. These are the ones that are the current. And so it's showing existing, proposed, and having it merged over, so you can see what the impact is.
Correct.
These I found very interesting drawings, and I'm glad that you've put them on the screen because it helps, I think, to understand the amended proposals that we are now considering.
So if you see on these diagrams, the roof form doesn't reach some of the height poles here because the design, it represents the amended design before the panel, not the height poles evident in the photographs. So the roof form has been brought back a further 1.5 metres from those height poles. If you scroll up to the first page here, you can see on that, no, the next one up, the roof plan. So you can see the height poles indicated on the plan there. If you zoom in, F and E represent the previous extent of the roof form. And you can see there the roof form has been drawn back by an additional 1.5 metres there, reduced in form. The height poles K and J have also been set back as well. But for the purpose of the roof form, height poles F and E have now been set back an additional 1.5 metres, and that's why the design has been overlaid over those height poles shown in the photographs to show that it's a further reduction compared to even the height poles you're viewing in the photographs.
Thank you.
So, and that's consistent with the section that we saw at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
So all
you.
the plans before the panel currently reflect the amended design. We just prepared that additional plan to highlight the further reduction compared to the height poles that you viewed.
Just a final comment through you, Chair. My understanding is that there are both pre and post-lodgement dilapidation report conditions recommended, and so I think that will be the way to manage that particular issue. And I think they're already in the condition or the draft conditions of consent.
Thank you. Any further comments? Just very briefly, Michael, if you'd like to just make one or two minor comments based on the discussion today and the drawings and the, I guess, information which I think is important to have been put forward and understood by all of us.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. But just one point. Carlu Parade is an extremely busy road.
Yes.
The entry to Carlu Parade is at a very difficult location. You've got to bend and cars fly around there at great speed. It's the traffic management plan would clearly really has to address I appreciate the management of traffic within the precinct, being our local cars and whatever, but probably more important is the management of deliveries, materials deliveries, concrete trucks, all the vehicles associated with constructing this dwelling, and also the interface of local traffic into Carlu Parade. Please don't underestimate how difficult that is. It will involve permanent traffic control on Carlu Parade.
Michael, I think hence that is why the panel has raised the whole question of the CTMP, knowing exactly what you've said, and in that sense, understanding the problems that it potentially can create, and hence, so also the other reports which are required are things that will be done and will be obviously addressing the issues you've raised and potentially have been already identified. So thank you very much.
So the other point I just wanted to make, sorry, was the roof plan. There is
well,
no
I'm sorry, I was about, Michael, I'll just interrupt you for a second. I was about to ask and confirm that obviously a roof plan is another drawing which probably does exist, and if it doesn't, it's not a major issue.
Well, it does in respect if we don't have a drawing from which construction can be constructed to, because at the moment it's diagrammatic.
I'm saying that if it doesn't, I'm suggesting, Michael, if it doesn't exist, it will exist, and it may well exist. It may well exist already, and perhaps was not in the set that was circulated. But I mean, it's obviously if it were to proceed, there would have to be a roof drawing, and there no doubt would be.
But it needs to. The drawing has to be. I mean, if a drawing is produced post approval, that doesn't meet the objectives of is what we're currently considering. I mean, clearly that drawing has to be produced before an approval is granted. Secondly, the impact of any solar panels or any other structures on the roof, again, is something that needs to be understood. Because solar panels are required, and if there's a bank of solar panels on a structure that is 45 degrees to the north to intercept the most the sun at the most optimum location, will it actually impact? Effectively increases the height of the building.
I
So
understand.
that hasn't been addressed. There's been no reference. I mean, it's referred in the BASICS report that it will be provided, but there's nothing actually physically designed on the roof structure. And it has height implications.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I would
That's
strongly
something which,
encourage that the council would please assess that component of the design.
sure. I mean, if the solar panels were within the envelope that is an approvable or appropriate envelope, then obviously this is not an issue.
I mean, that's for the council assessor to
Exactly.
determine. But at the moment, there's nothing for him to determine because it hasn't been provided by the applicant.
Yeah, it's if it were to be approved, I think possibly there are conditions that could be included that would address this issue. So,
I understand that. I guess I just wanted to this is one of the items I just wanted to make everybody aware of, that there's some incomplete information in respect of the design documentation, and ideally that's dealt with in advance of any approval.
thank you, and we hear you. I've written it down, and I'm sure the other panel members are fully aware of what you've suggested. Panel members, any other questions, or if not, then I'll proceed to the next item. But Phil or no? Well, can I thank you all?
Panel. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for all of you, and for the applicant and for the adjoining neighbours for your patience and time this afternoon. I realise this is going to be a difficult problem in many ways, but hopefully with an understanding of some of the issues that we can come to an agreement which is going to satisfy and be accepted by everyone involved. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So that deals with 4.3. The only other item that was on the agenda is item 4.4, which we indicated has been withdrawn. And so on that basis, that's all of the items I have, and I will close the public meeting. And the time is now, what, 1:40, I think.
1:42 according to you.
1:42, sorry, thank you. All right, now.
Ross, are you happy for me to stop the recording?
Yes, please.
Yes,
I think
okay.
unless there's any other comments that the panel wish to make on the recording, I think it's been a very interesting discussion with Carlo, and hopefully the end result is something which will be accepted by all of the people involved.